Today I'm going to be taking a look at this 3TB Launchbox build made by JMachin. I think I'm saying that right. I just refer to them as JM. But I reviewed a Batocera SD card build for the Steam Deck made by them in the past. And I also own another hard drive from these guys. So my experiences thus far have been pretty positive. So when it showed up at my doorstep, it's a 3.5-inch hard drive that comes in this enclosure. It's a very plasticky, very basic kind of hard drive enclosure. And it also comes with a USB-C cable and a power supply. When I plugged it into my desktop, I immediately had an issue. The red light on here was flashing, indicating that it was in fact getting power, but my PC was not recognizing it. Nothing was happening, nothing was popping up on screen. I pulled the hard drive out and popped it back in, seeing if that might help. Still nothing. At this point, I wanted to know if it was the enclosure that was causing the issue or if the actual hard drive itself was fried. So I have a spare enclosure lying around that I grabbed, and I popped the hard drive into there, and my computer recognized it immediately. So it's definitely something with this enclosure. I reached out to JM and they said they would replace the enclosure right away, but I didn't feel like waiting for them, so I'm going to go ahead and proceed with this review using my spare enclosure. But it's still nice to know that they're willing to replace any defective or non-functioning parts. So once again, this is a Launchbox build, and I'm a really big fan of Launchbox. It's very simple, easy to navigate, and just overall a real user-friendly experience. As we can see right here, they have Xbox One games, PS4 games, which I'm willing to bet are actually the PC versions of these games. That's really common with these emulation hard drives. Whenever they allege to have Xbox One, PS5, or PS4 games, more often than not, it's the PC version. So we also have stuff like GameCube, PS2, Nintendo Switch. What I'm really interested in though is this Xbox collection. I have yet to encounter one of these hard drives that has a really solid original Xbox library. A lot of times what I see is when you click the original Xbox version of the game, it'll actually boot up the PS2 or the GameCube version. But we're going to check this one out and see if this one is legit. It's got a really impressive library, probably one of the best I've seen for original Xbox. So let's jump right in with Xbox One and confirm what I already knew. And yes, these are in fact the PC versions of these games. It's not a big deal. It doesn't take away from the fact that these games are actually on here. It's just a tad bit misleading. But regardless of the fact that they're PC versions, the library is actually pretty impressive. They got some really good games on here for the Xbox One section. One issue you might encounter is a lot of these games are going to be the Asia Pacific version or the international versions that are going to require you to change the language settings from the start. Outside of that, all of these Xbox One/PC games all seem to run pretty good. Now bear in mind, this is the case with all of these hard drives. Performance is going to be dependent on what machine you're using. Now mind you, my PC is actually pretty old. It's getting close to about a decade old, and it handles a lot of these games really well. They do recommend that you have at least an i5 or higher and a GTX 780 or above. Switching over to PS4, the game selection was a lot more slim, and it was a similar story. These are the PC versions of these games. And like I said before, it's not the biggest deal, but it is slightly misleading. PS3 was a pretty hit or miss experience. Some games ran fine, others wouldn't run at all, and some would freeze up right before I was even able to play. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with the ROMs that are on this hard drive. If anything, I think it's maybe compatibility with my old PC, or just something wrong with the emulator itself. Jumping into what I was most looking forward to checking out, Xbox ran beautifully on here. Every game I selected was actually the original Xbox version, and the emulation settings were optimized and ran smooth. It's just click and play. It was so refreshing to finally see one of these hard drives do OG Xbox some justice. All the heavy hitters were there, all the best games for the console were in the library, and everything ran good. While gathering footage for this review, I spent an entire day playing original Xbox games, like from sunup to sundown. If you're a fan of the original Xbox, this is the hard drive for you. They didn't cut any corners. You don't click on a game and it takes you to the PS2 version. They did it right, and that was really good to see. The Nintendo Switch selection was pretty solid and everything ran pretty good. One thing I noticed is that they did a really good job of allocating what needs to go where. And what I mean by that is they didn't just bloat up like one selection of games and then neglect the others. They really put some thought into how many games they want to put for each console and really jam-packed these 3 terabytes. I'm pretty impressed. Sticking with Nintendo, the GameCube and Wii selections were good as well, and performed about as good as I would expect. And despite having the PC versions of the Xbox One and PS4 games, this thing actually has a dedicated PC section. And it doesn't have trash games either. There's actually some really good games on here, including Pal World, which really caught me off guard. Was not expecting to see that on one of these. And of course, at this point, I think any one of these that you get is going to have a decent PS2 and Dreamcast library. So the 3 terabyte Launchbox build by JM. Guys, I have to say, this is a really good bang for your buck hard drive. I know there are some other massive ones out there, like I did a review on a 12 terabyte one not too long ago. And those are great, but if you're looking for something a little more affordable that covers all the main bases and you'll still have a really solid library of retro games, I think this one is really worth taking a look at. Now, I know these whole ROM set hard drives are an acquired taste. It's not for everyone. And if I'm being quite honest, I don't know how much longer these things are going to stay on the market. But it's nice to finally see one that does the original Xbox right, while still managing to have an awesome library of games for all these other consoles. If you guys are interested in the 3 terabyte Launchbox build by JM, I'll put links in the description below. Until next time, this is Ness, signing out.